We are discussing the subject of leadership. Naturally, following the election that we did, we felt to give you the DNA of leaders, what you should be looking for in a leader, what can help us to be able to intelligently select our leaders and not just emotionally or tribally. And today we come to the conclusion of that series. Next month, we go deep into our mission series. We started this series by talking about Barnabas, invisible leaders. We then moved on to talk about political leaders. Do you remember? My own presidential candidate was here. And then we talked about limping leaders last week. And today we want to finish by talking about reluctant leaders. A reluctant leader is a person who they know what they're supposed to do, but they're scared. And probably you're here. And you are needed in the field because your contribution is necessary to this mission that God has called all of us into, the mission called life. There's something you're meant to do, but certain factors frustrate you. Certain things from inside of yourself and outside of yourself probably frustrate you. At the end of this service, I'll be asking you to disregard anything the devil is telling you by way of fear. And I'll be asking you to take a step of courage and to stand here. If you sense God is calling you to something and you sit back, you are shortchanging yourself significantly. A lot of people ask themselves, how can I know that God is talking to me? Let me tell you, it's the easiest thing. It's the easiest thing. The God of heaven cannot fail to know how to talk to you. He can't. The easier thing is to pretend you didn't hear. That's the easier thing. But when God is prompting you to do something, in fact, it is so amazing that a lot of times you would even say, I just knew. I just knew that it's what I was supposed to do. But somehow I was ignoring it. I need to say also that when God calls you to do something, it doesn't have to appear spiritual. Okay? It doesn't. It just comes to you in a way that you know, it comes very silently, it comes very microscopically, but its exit is often huge, as we are going to see today. And so I need to prepare you early, because I'll be asking you to take a step of faith and take on the challenge that God is calling you to do for the glory of His name and the good of people around the world. I have confidence that one person, 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, or all of us can do something to change this generation. God is calling you to do it, and you know it. So in many ways, I'm not really going to be telling you something you have never heard about. If I mention something that has never come to you before, then you're not in that bracket. So the evidence is, you will know that that's me. That's me. And that's the space that God is calling us to. Today, God will be calling us to step out of an enemy called comfort and average. Where you feel like you've arrived and you've settled, God is in the habit of often moving you from there into a new and wonderful space because of an existing problem. Once upon a time, I was 22 and a half years old. I was attending a youth camp out in Naivasha. And we loved doing these youth missions in the church where I grew up in. And one of the youth leaders there, I've been invited to do a little workshop on Bible study. And my friend Ben asked me, there were 120 teens at that camp. He asked me, what do you think is the biggest problem affecting young people today? It was just like a conversation over lunchtime. And I was very quick to mention what the problems are. The problems of drugs, the problems of indiscipline, the problems of this and that and the other. Because we had been teaching these Bible studies for some time. And then he asked me, what do you think can be done? And I told him God should send a young person to these guys. Because I'm looking at you guys, you're kind of old. That time, he was 31. You guys are kind of old, you don't connect very well, with what these guys are going through. And he told me, what about you? I said, what about me? He said, do you think? I said, no, not me. But I think that God needs to send someone to come and help with camps like this on a more regular basis. Ben didn't do any more than that. I was doing art very actively at that time. I was enjoying myself. I was very comfortable. And Ben asked me, do you think maybe you want to start praying about it? I said, no. My life is very fine and I'm very good. But you guys start hunting for someone who should do these kinds of things. Over time, Ben and our youth pastor at that time called Fred started to, because of this camp, started to give us more and more things to do. So once upon a time, our youth pastor sent me to represent him because he couldn't go to a fellowship in Daystar University. And he told me, prepare something around family. Here I'm 23 years old. But I prepared and I went. To my shock, it was an Ethiopian fellowship. Now, it wasn't shock that it was Ethiopian. It was a shock that there were families with children, mothers, fathers. There were so many. And I went there, I'd gone in, those jeans that are torn over here. I was assuming it's a youth meeting. But I arrived and there were all these families. God helped me. And I ministered on family and finished. They were so excited. They gave me gifts. They had a duvet. Then they brought another bag and they told me, this is for your wife. And I was not married. I left church that day and I went to Fred and I told him, why did you do that? Because you sent me to these old people to go and speak to them and I was feeling very inadequate. And he told me, how did it turn out? I said, well, here are the gifts they gave for you. Because me, I don't have a wife. So here are the gifts they've given. He told me, no, the gift is not mine. It's yours. You keep it. But from the time that I got that gift, something was planted in my head. And I thought, oh my goodness. What if I was telling them all the wrong things? Because they seem to have believed me and taken up everything I was saying. So I said to tell him, how do I know that I'm not a cult leader? He told me, maybe you need to consider taking up some courses that can help if you want to know whether you are preaching right or wrong, because I told him it's a great responsibility. You sent me out there all by myself and I'm here. So then I discovered that there is a course called homiletics. It teaches you mechanics of preaching. So when I found out where can I take this course, I was told it's offered in many Bible schools, but it never comes as an independent course. In fact, usually it comes in second year. So what you need to do is join a Bible school. I said these are the things I don't want. Okay? Because, my friends and I, we used to look at pastors. We talk about pastors all the time, Kingi, myself, and others, who I will not mention. We used to say that job is the last job we want. But something still used to drive us for those camps. And we're wondering why. So there's something you're feeling and then you don't want it. So you're sort of like una rega somewhere there in between. You're not clear. So this thing kept increasing because opportunities to speak at these camps were coming more and more. And I was getting more and more worried. Like, how do I know this word is just a word I have invented? That So we asked around in a few schools, and my mentor Fred told me, what are you really scared of? I said, I don't want to become a pastor. He said, it's not up to me. Because if God is on your case, I said, even God knows that we have an agreement. I'm not going to do that. And let me tell you something, God is clever. If God is on your case, God will get you. The issue was not the title. The issue was something was inside me and God was after it. I didn't want the name. But somehow this course was not ejecting itself from second year. So Fred asked me to convince me to somehow, look, just go for the whole 4 years. What's the problem? So I thought, okay, fine. He told me, in fact, you're not alone. There are others who we have, there's a call committee in church that has thought maybe we should sponsor all of you, and you don't have to join ministry. Just get it. I mean, it's a degree. I said, but okay, but I don't have the money. He came back 2 weeks later, and he said, the church will sponsor 80% of it. Now I was trapped. I felt, okay, but you can't call me a pastor. I told him that. He said, I won't call you a pastor. That's fine. From the time I joined Bible school, day one, not the church, but everybody else in that school, that's when I started hearing this pastor name. I struggled with it for 10 years. Until 2005, when I joined Mamlaka Hill Chapel, I just said, that's it. It's fine. And I graciously and humbly accepted the title. I struggled to which school to go until the decision became very easy, because Fred Nyabera told me, there's a school here you can go to, and I was wondering how it is, because there were too few schools abroad. Finally, I just said, okay, fine, let me go and study. Until Fred Nyabera came and told me, why don't you go to India? I said, where? India. And I quickly decided for a Pan-African Christian school here. Had I gone to India and come back, I'd have been coming to tell you, brothers and sisters, praise the God, you would have had a pastor with a different accent. C.S. Lewis says that getting saved for him was easy. It was God's work of grace, and it was amazing. But joining ministry and doing something which specifically God wanted him to do, he said, that one he accepted kicking and screaming. C.S. Lewis has shot Christian movies and written amazing books. He said, even to get into that space where God wanted his concentration was a struggle. And that's why you have the struggle inside you. The thing which God wants you to do is so lofty. It is so big. It is something which God commissions you. And the first feeling you probably have is that it is too big for me to do. That's probably the first sign that it is God. I want us to read Judges chapter 6. The story of a man who had the kind of struggle that we have, and then we'll draw a few lessons from there, and then we shall pray. Judges chapter 6, verse 1 through to 26. The Bible says, the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them over into the hands of the Midianites. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza, and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep, nor cattle, nor donkeys. They came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count them or their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. Whenever the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet who said, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hands of the Egyptians, and I delivered you from the hand of your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live. But you have not listened to me. The angel of the Lord came and sat in the oak of Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abezerite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon said. But if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hands of Midian. The Lord turned to him and said, go in the strength that you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied. But how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. The Lord answered, I will be with you, and you will strike down the Midianites, leaving none alive. Gideon replied, if now I have found favor in your eyes, then give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you. And the Lord said, I will wait until you return. The story is very electric. After that, God gives him a sign that it is him God is calling. Gideon went ahead against the wishes of his family. He went ahead and built an army of 32,000 soldiers to fight Midian. And the Lord still told him those are too many people. He told them to reduce them. He reduced them from 32,000 to 10,000. God still told him there are too many people. And he reduced them to 300 men. And they routed Midian and finished everyone. That's the power of this story. A reluctant leader is an individual with an internal conviction that is in conflict with external factors. A reluctant leader is an individual with an internal conviction that is in conflict with external factors. Inside you, something has been chasing you. But you've looked around and nothing agrees. Nothing agrees. Let me take us quickly through some talking points of this story. The oppression Israel was going through was not a light one. They were oppressed by Midian for 7 years. They had become private citizens in their own country. They were not free to walk around. They were depressed and unhappy. The number of the soldiers of Midian, the Bible described them as the sons of the sea. They were too many to count. The self-esteem of the Israelites was waning very fast. They had an internal problem. They had sinned against God. And so God is the one who sent Midian to attack them and to rout them. That was the problem. So forget alone that you are seeing a foreign army coming against you. You know deep inside that your nation has done something. And that's why we're being oppressed the way we are. God waited 7 years until people started crying out to God for relief. They say this is too much. We are starving. Any crop we plant, anything we try to do, we are surrounded by these amazing and gigantic armies. God, what are we going to do? People started to pray and to ask God for help. That was the second thing. Number 3, God answered them by sending someone to speak to them. He sent a prophet. He sent a voice. He came and he sent one individual prophet to one person. And the prophet said, you are the one God is sending to cause the rescue. Ordinarily, you would expect that God will give some conviction to an army, or to go to the general in the army, or to go to the defense forces of Israel. He went to just one person, and that one person said, you are the one that God is sending to rescue your nation. The person said, me. How can it be me? How is it possible that it's me? He couldn't believe that it was him. You know why? because he was the most unlikely candidate anyone would think of. Israel had 12 tribes. And some of those tribes produced were very big in their size and in their caliber. God came to a person of the tribe of Manasseh that was weak in their clan, and didn't just come to the tribe of Manasseh. He went to a person who was a last born in that family, whose father was an idol worshipper. Talk of unlikely candidates. That was Gideon that God sent to. Gideon was so scared, unbelievably scared. He told God, you must prove to me that it's you talking to me, and you must make me know whether you are serious about this thing. Why would you come to me? Because Gideon had several disqualifying things about himself that he knew it cannot be possible that it's me you're calling. Let me ask you something. We complain a lot about our country. I complain a lot about our country. There's no time I ever watch news. The last news I watched, Raphael Wanjala was on TV talking about how we should fund their many wives. You feel upset when you watch things like that. Our country is already 45% unemployed. Our budget is already funded from people from abroad. The MPs we have are already so greedy. And now you want more money. Complaining is what we do well. But can it be you? If God stepped out to you and told you, I'm appointing you to solve the problem, what would you think? We like to say, get someone else, right? Maybe a politician should do it. Maybe someone of greater caliber should do it. What if someone sat next to you? They told you, I've come from God, and the person is you. It's unbelievable to think of that. But God uses the agency of a voice to talk to you. And that's why I'm here today. So this message is not for your sister who should have been listening. And it's not for your friends at work who should have been here today. It is for you who is listening right now. We need to examine your personal disqualifying factors that make you think why it can't be you, who God wants to make a change. Several things disqualify us. One, fear. Personal fear. I don't have a background in this thing. Shyness. Your background. Personal sin. That you feel, it can't be me. God, there are many people who are better than me. Comparison with other people. Failure. Pain. There are many. The list is really endless. I come from a big family. I'm not as eloquent as my sister is. There are people here who can do this job. There are people who are better educated. Let me tell you something. Those are not the ones God goes to. God comes to you for something He has sent you to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about politics. I'm just giving an example. But there's something God has planted in your heart to do, and He wants you to do it. I want to read you a poem that I wrote many years ago. May I? I wrote it back in 1998. The poem is called A Man Cannot Cry. It is accompanied by a painting that I've done recently, or redone recently, because the first one was sold. And the painting on your screens is of a little boy, illustrative of a man. And he looks very strong on the outward by virtue of his hair. The picture is in black and white or sepia. He's wearing jeans and he has a rough look, but he's crying. And the story around this painting is illustrated by a poem. And I want to read it. It says this: He was the second son of a second son. She was the daughter of the king. Never in the history of the kingdom had a marriage occurred between a non-entity such as he and a princess. Yet she was the girl he loved. They contemplated eloping, but on second thoughts, he dissuaded her. There is yet a way out, he told her, as he held her close to him. Something my father told me years ago. What? She wanted to know. Tell me, my darling, what? I have to make a name for myself. Only as one of the king's men could I have a chance to marry you from your father's hand. The 6-year war was cold, muddy, and full of blood. Every day of every month of every year, the image of the beautiful princess, his princess, flashed across his mind. Every thought and every pain and every fear reminded him of his love for the princess and the price he would have to pay to win her father's heart. As long as the war endured, he would need to remember that a man with a vision in the night feels no cold. That a man on a mission in his feet complains of no mud. That a king's man considers scars of war not a loss but a gain. That a man worthy of a princess cannot cry. End of poem. A man worthy of a princess cannot cry. In spite of all the factors around you that you feel are opposing you in terms of what God can do, you cannot cry. You cannot complain because there's a commission upon you. I need to ask you, what is God asking you to do, and what's stopping you from doing it? Is there something that you feel you need to overcome in order to do that thing which God would like you to do? Let me take you through 5 steps to know when it's God. When it's God. This is what you'll know. Number 1, you have a stubborn conviction about something. It's stubborn. This thing won't leave you. You used to think that it's a dream. You used to think that it's a wish. But it's still with you. You wake up and it's looking at you. For some people, it's called a holy disquiet. It's a discomfort you have about something. It could also be selfless anger. Most anger is selfish. But there is a selfless anger that is on behalf of other people. Maybe you see injustice for children, and you just feel angry. It won't leave you. You see things happening at a certain corner. It could be political unrest. And you are thinking, why is it happening? It will not leave you. It's called a stubborn conviction. That thing is microscopically living inside you. And it's not going to leave you. And if you ask yourself now, it's there. Just look inside your heart. You could be in the middle of a flourishing job. You could be in the middle of comfort. But it's there. It's prompting you because it is your gift. Your family doesn't have to see it. Your friends don't have to support it. In fact, that is what is disturbing you. That why can't other people see it? I'm the only one who is feeling this thing. Am I the only one who is thinking that a children's home should be opened here? Am I the only one who is thinking that our country needs better leaders? Am I the only one thinking that a clinic should be opened here? Am I the only one thinking that someone should start a school here? Yes, you are. And it's fine. The second sign is that you feel unworthy or inadequate to do it. That's a very clear sign that it's God. It's big to do. You don't see the resources. You don't see where it's going to come from. You don't see how it's going to be funded. You can't understand which direction it will take. And so that's the first thing that holds you back. You feel inadequate about it. Could you be president? You know, immediately you feel, my goodness, how? How? Where do I start? That was Gideon. Number 3, a wall of opposition, sometimes from very well-meaning people, like family. They look at you and they tell you, you can't even speak in front of 2 people. Now will it be that you are saying you want to be the MCA? And it's not that they mean badly, but they just oppose you. You share the idea, sometimes with the wrong people, sometimes with very well-meaning people, and they just don't feel you on it. Now, this wall of opposition is important because it measures your conviction. It is what separates men from boys and girls from women. It's what makes you, you. It's your ability to go against what people would popularly say because your conviction won't let you sleep. It's there with you all the time. So God requires that you look at the wall and you move back and you decide there's no other way around this wall except to go over it. Number 4 is a peace about your conviction you cannot explain. Every time that idea comes to your mind, you feel peace about it. You look around you and no one else feels peace, but you do. Number 5, a stranger tells you, a person unrelated to that issue or an authority over your life just can point it out to you and tell you, you look like you really love children. Someone has told you that in the past. This thing looks like you. When we were busy in these camps and we didn't want anything to do with Bible school, people used to walk up to me and tell me, man, you just sound like a pastor. And I'm like, no way, that's not me. And you're running. You see, friends, God can see something in you that you're not seeing. And that is what God saw in Gideon. And it's okay if you can't see it. You just need to start that conversation with God. God told Gideon, go the way you are. You know, God can come to you and He tells you, how are you, governor? Those are the kinds of things God says. How are you, owner of a school? How are you, starter of a business? How are you, MD? And you are like, me. Because so many things disqualify you. That's how God starts. And then He tells you, start with what you have. Don't wait until all the funds are in and everybody has supported it and you have all the papers ready and everything you need. That is not how God works, because God says, I will be with you. It doesn't matter whether you're the least in your family, whether your family has no reputation, whether nobody knows who you are, nobody knows where you come from, you are number last in your class, nobody celebrated you, the people look at you in your family, they tell you, how can it be you? God says, I will be there with you. And you're enjoying the comforts of a good salary, you are enjoying the comforts of good perks, you are enjoying the comforts of a good home, but your conviction won't let you go. C.S. Lewis calls it the hound of heaven. It won't let you go. You smell like meat, and the hound of heaven has been told to catch you. And no matter where you run, no matter how much money you're earning, heaven is knocking at your door. But there's something even more foreboding. Even more foreboding. If God calls you to do something and you don't do it, it won't be done. Because God wants you to do it. God wanted Gideon. And he was not guessing about him. When he arrives at you, it's not because he has had a series of failures. It's not because he has no one else. It's not because he hasn't seen more qualified people. It is because he wants you. And he has thought carefully about you. And he knows your weaknesses. He knows the things that disqualify you from doing it. He knows that you don't have the age, you don't have the experience, you don't have the background, you don't have the education, but he still wants you. And he won't give up. And he is not comfortable where you are. And it doesn't matter the kind of oppression there is around you, because somebody has been praying for deliverance. There is someone in a certain area who's crying for a school to go there, who wants a hospital to go there, who wants supply of shoes to be here, who wants someone to open a shop in this place, and the arrow has fell on you. And God is waiting. The arrow is pointing out like this to where you are. What are you going to do? Our self-defeating thoughts are just like Gideon's. First, he found it incredulous. My father worships Baal. How can I do that? So in the night, God told him to offer a sacrifice. And in the night now, Gideon, trembling, he went at night and destroyed the altar of Baal. And he set up a sacrifice for God because he was too scared. And the next day people woke up and they found the temple of Baal down. And they investigated. And they asked, who did this? They were told it's Gideon. His own father came to defend him. And said, if Baal is really God, so you let Baal defend himself. And that's how he survived death. Which means when Gideon was destroying this temple, he didn't know he'd be alive tomorrow. He just did what was the next thing to do. Don't wait to see the other side of the wall in order to start. God is with you. Secondly, there is a nation waiting. Friends, there could be a whole nation waiting for your action. You cannot stop to do something because you're afraid. Do it afraid. That's what Gideon did. Throughout the season when Gideon was doing these things, he was actually scared to the end. The next thing Gideon said, now I need to be sure. Even after that. So he told God, I'm going to take this fleece, this woolen thing, and I'm going to put water on it. And I'll put it here on the ground, okay? Please, God, don't be angry. But if it is really you, then cause this cloth in the morning to be wet and everything around it to be dry. And God said, done. He woke up the next morning and that's what had happened. He was scared doing that. Then he told God, please, one more. Now the fleece is dry, but let the fleece be now wet and everything else around dry. Let's see whether you can pull off that one. And God still pulled it off. Okay, then finally now he got some courage. So he went and gathered people around him, and he gathered an army of 32,000. And I'll tell you that army was still not enough, because the Midianites were like the sands of the seashore. God came in audacity, and he told him, there are too many. There are too many. Your clever strategic plan is too much. It's too much. The experts you're trying to get, they are too much. Because those people will boast that with a great army, we routed the Midian. So God told him, disqualify those whose hearts are beating, because they were scared. So 20,000 fell off. And God said, since the 10,000 are too much, take them by the river. He took them down to the river, and he said, the ones who go down like a dog to drink water from that, disqualify them. And they were disqualified like 9,700. And he was left with 300. God said, these are enough. God does not need your cleverness to win. He does not need the people you think are necessary to win. He needs you and your ability to do it afraid, to save a country like ours. That's the wonder of our God. Two things can be very dangerous. Your thoughts about yourself versus God's thoughts about you. Who is winning? That's important. And that's why you are hearing this message today. So I need to ask you and challenge you. Do it afraid. You know, Gideon, with the 300, he was still very scared. And so he got these people, and they went out to the border of the Midian. And God knew this guy can't do it. But the good thing is, he's been obeying. So God told Gideon, since you're scared, creep into the camp of the Midianites and listen to what the soldiers are saying. And two soldiers were talking to each other. And one was telling him, I had a dream that a stone fell from the hill and came and destroyed our whole camp. Then the soldier said, that can be nothing but the God of Gideon coming to destroy us. That is what encouraged him. And so Gideon and his 300 soldiers took jars and a trumpet, and they blew the trumpet and started beating the jars, and the whole army of the Midian took their swords, and they started stabbing each other till they were completely destroyed. Here is the point. Don't measure your opposition with your eyes, because God is with you. You may need to do some very drastic changes about your situation, because your stubborn conviction will not leave. It will not leave. I don't expect that I'm telling you something new. What I'm saying you've been thinking about. It's been disturbing you. But today is the day to decide that you'll do it afraid. God won't give you the whole picture. He will just want you to go step by step by step, because God is with you. I want to pray with you. Because for me, if I didn't take one step to go to that Bible school, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't. What is God asking you to do, even though you're afraid? I promise you, it is the place for your destiny that you may be sitting on because you're scared. 365 times in the Bible, God says, don't be afraid. Some people have said, one for each day. Don't be afraid. I want you to take a step of faith. Stand to your feet if this conviction is with you and come here. We're going to pray. Just come. We're going to pray. Come, 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 come. We're going to pray together. Disregard the fear. Walk away from it. Something God is calling you to do. Walk away. And we're going to pray. We'll take as many of you as need to come. But God wants to change your life today. Something is inside you. Just come. Just come. Just come. Disregard the fear. Go over it. God needs you to do something that is different.